Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we're going to take a look at the brand new AYN Odin 2 Mini, which is a PlayStation Vita in 2024, and I'm already running Persona 4 Golden on it. Going to be doing some quick impressions here, and then a full review video in a few days, since I just don't like rushing reviews. So don't worry, this isn't going to be everything, although it is quite a bit. I've also been given the heads up with this device specifically that it's an early preview unit. The mold isn't finished, and so don't look at anything like that, smudges and all of that. It's supposed to have the same plastic as the Odin 2. The one I have here is completely different, so just keep that in mind as you're watching today. Special thanks to AYN for sending this device over for review, but as usual they have no input in what I say and they haven't seen this video ahead of time. However, I do have a link in the description to buy the device if you're interested. There's two different models to choose from. There's a base and a pro. The base has 8GB of RAM and only a single black color option for $339 US. The Pro has 12GB of RAM and there's a white and a black option for $399 US. The model that I have here is the Pro model. Both of these are plus shipping, but until June 21st, they also include a screen protector and a bag. And if you use the Odin 2 Mini 10 code, you get $10 off. Now, if the first question you're going to ask is if you need the extra RAM for Switch, we've seen with the Odin 2 base that it has no issues running Switch. So the extra RAM isn't really necessary at this point. And you would mostly only go for the Pro model if you wanted the white version, which is personally what I ordered. One also quick thing, you likely noticed that the ABXY are in Xbox mode on the actual handheld. AYN says that you can open it up and swap the buttons, but I won't be able to confirm this until the actual review. It'll be the last thing that I film as I just have a habit of breaking things when I open them, so I didn't want to risk it. If you're curious about Vita cases, I have a generic one here that I got from AliExpress, and as expected, it doesn't fit. So just keep that in mind that if you planned on using a Vita case for this, AYN didn't send me their case, so I'm not sure how that is. In this video, we're going to focus on the Mini compared to the Odin 2, but as well other devices, and I think the biggest thing people want to know is the screen, as well as battery and thermals and all of that, and I'm covering all of that in this video. That means that we're not going to look heavily at performance today, since there's really no point. It's the same processor and RAM in both of them, and it would just be a waste of your time. Since I've already been asked to test Vita on this, it seems like there's some of you that maybe just don't know that. So I would suggest that you would check out my many Odin 2 videos to give you an idea of performance of what this can do, and I'll have all of that in the description. But the general idea is that the Odin 2 and the Odin 2 Mini have the power for any Android emulator that we have access to right now. That means you can play a lot of Switch games, provided the emulator has them working, PlayStation 2, GameCube and Wii, and upscaled, and all of those are fantastic. Vita is still in its infancy, but as long as the game works, you can play it. And then everything else under, like Dreamcast and Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 1, and all of the other systems are playable without a single issue. So if there's a system you want to play, it can play it. But I think the point being here is the Odin 2 and Odin 2 Mini have the same performance for whatever exists on Android. So I'm going to leave performance tests for my review just to double check that there's no actual weirdness going on and nothing really throttling and all that sort of thing. But from the testing that I've done, in very limited so far, and side by side, it's all the same. So just keep that in mind as you're watching today. So once again, for a first impressions video, we're going to take a look at the screen, the size of it, the ergonomics and comfort, which surprised me, and a little bit more. And then we're going to make sure that all of the rest is the same as the Odin 2. So the buttons, the triggers, the sticks, all of that. I do have some battery tests as well at the end, but we're going to need a little bit more time to do all of them. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so I think one of the first questions people might have is how big is this? So let me share some side-by-sides of the Odin 2 Mini with a variety of different devices. And while we do that, I'm going to alternate through some games to show you screen comparisons at the same time. First up, of course, is the actual PlayStation Vita, because of obvious reasons. And we're only going to be doing this for size and a quick persona comparison. Size-wise, yeah, they're roughly the same. The Mini is thicker though, which gives it a lot better ergonomics and comfort in your hands. Big difference in screen quality as well, but that's expected. Next up is the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. Given it seems that the Odin 2 Mini is aiming to be a better version of that. And once again, it's very similar in size here from almost every perspective. From a color perspective, it's a big difference. The colors look a lot more natural on the Mini compared to the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. First of our OLEDs here, and the Anbernic RG556 is next, and the OLED panel on the 556 really shines in comparison. I didn't expect the Mini LED to compete with an OLED, and from my perspective, it doesn't. Switch OLED is basically the exact same scenario. The OLED panel wins out, but the Mini is just so much smaller. Decided to have a little bit of fun with the Just Buy a Steam Deck Bro crowd, just to see how small the Mini is in comparison, and it's hilarious. Sorry for the upside down picture, I noticed it after, but man, it's a big difference in size. Neo Pocket Air for the 5 of us who own one. No surprise here with the OLED panel winning out once again. And lastly, for my budget-focused friends out there, here's the Trim UI Smart Pro. More for a size comparison, and it's absolutely amazing that we can get this power in this size. The Mini is a little bit thicker, but these both feel great in my hands. Of course, here's the Odin 2 for comparison, and I have to say it's kind of close. The Mini screen is really bright, but the Odin 2 is slightly more saturated. It's also as thick as the Odin 2's thinnest point, which is a great thing. Then here's a quick example of how dim the Mini can get without extra dim on, and the answer is very, very dim. Now the thing that everybody wants to know is how good is the screen, and let's do a deep dive. The screen here is a 5-inch Mini LED 1920 by 1080 screen, which is completely different than the screen in the Odin 2, which is a 6-inch IPS 1920 by 1080. Coming into this, the biggest concerns are, is there blooming, or vignetting, or ghosting on this Mini LED display, since those are a few flaws that are known to it. Blooming is when light spills out and it makes it look like darker objects have a halo around them. Vignetting is essentially the border of the screen being slightly darker or dimmer than the rest of the screen. Here's an example of the blooming effect. And as you can see, or maybe you can't on my end, it's minimal, if any. You can see the vignetting more than the blooming. And for vignetting, it's the very first screen that you see when you boot up the device, and it might scare you away right away. In reality, when I put dark mode on, I rarely ever see it in games or anywhere after. Don't get me wrong, it's absolutely present if you look for it. You'll find it. It's just something that I got used to right away, and in games, it's something that I stopped noticing pretty quickly, because it just seems to blend together with the rest of the screen. I think this is going to be the most contentious part for a lot of people, but so far from my perspective, I don't find it to be a concern. But everybody has their preferences. On the ghosting part, yeah, this doesn't seem to have it anywhere near as bad as the Odin 2, and if it does, it's very much not noticeable. Here's a side-by-side with the Odin 2 and the Odin 2 Mini, and in person, I can see the Odin 2 ghosting quite a bit, but the Mini doesn't seem to have that concern. Doing a quick test outside on, thankfully, a bright sunny day, and I have the Odin 2, for comparison's sake, in the same spot, and it's absolutely no contest. The Mini has a much better and brighter screen. In fact, this might actually be the best screen that I've seen for a sunny day out of anything that I can think of. It's fantastic, it's super clear, and it looks great. This is a big win. One other item to cover on the panel is if it has HDR support. So I tested it in Plex, Moonlight, and YouTube to see if it's true. First up, I used Moonlight, and without HDR, just to show some streaming, I can see a decoding latency of about 10 ms. Then I tried enabling HDR, and it didn't work, no matter which way I did it from settings and all that, and it was the same story in both Plex and YouTube. So if this does have HDR, I might need a little bit more information on how to actually activate it. Just quickly, if you're curious about both video output and Bluetooth support, I can confirm that both work just fine right here off my initial tests. Using the new GuliKit KK3 Pro controller here with Bluetooth and the JumpGate dock, and everything seems to work. However, I wasn't getting audio for some reason, and I'm going to dig deeper into that to see if it's a setup issue or if a patch is needed, and leave it for my final review, because I kind of just rushed to see if this worked, didn't get audio, and then just didn't get a chance to continue testing it. On top of all of that, I just got in the new Vignetting Pro XR glasses, and those work absolutely perfectly with this. So all around, same as the Odin 2. Now, one area that we haven't talked about yet is input lag, and if there's been any changes for better or worse. I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. I am just not the technical type of reviewer who will dive deep into graphs and all of that, and I mostly rely on feel. The footage here, for anybody that wants to do their own work, is 4K 60, like all of my footage is. And going based just off of feel and not trying to get anybody's hopes up, but I feel like this is a slightly more responsive than the Odin 2 is, but I'm not sure how noticeable it might be for most people. It's really difficult for me to pin this down. I just don't have the know-how for these tests, and so take all of this with a grain of salt. I find it's better to just be upfront about all of this and honest, rather than just give you inaccurate testing data and posting inaccurate data, and then that just gets shared around and it's a bad thing. So the takeaway from this is it feels good, but so does the Odin 2 to me. So that might tell you either to trust me or not on this topic. Let's talk about the overall comfort and ergonomics and feel, because that was one of my main concerns coming into this, is I have a Vita, I have a Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, and neither of those are comfortable to me. The Vita definitely needs a grip, and so does a Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. I can nicely and confidently say that this is not that. This, thanks to the curves as well as the bulk of it, feels fantastic in your hands. I'm actually really happy with this. This is more like the Trim UI Smart Pro in comfort, just a bit thicker than it is on the other two. And if you have a Trim UI Smart Pro, on my part, it's very comfortable. This is more of that. So if one of the complaints you had with a Vita was that it's very uncomfortable because it's so slim and flat and all of that, this is so much better. It is a night and day difference in my eyes of comfort. Now, we'll revisit that for my actual review just to make sure that after hours and hours of gaming, that still holds up, but I don't see that changing. On the topic of face buttons, Dpad, and other buttons, if they're different, they fooled me. The sticks, the buttons, and the D-pad all feel the same as the Odin 2. The shoulders and the triggers are new, of course, and they're different, and you can see in a test here that it covers all of the percentages nicely for triggers, so that's a good thing. Speakers are likely another area that we want to know about, and so I did a very quick comparison sound-wise between the two devices of the Odin 2 and the Mini. And I'm going to use Horizon Chase because it's the only game that doesn't get me a copyright strike when doing sound tests. Okay, so let's talk about battery now, because there is a difference between the two. The Odin 2 has an 8,000 milliamp hour battery. The Mini has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. For mathematicians at home, that is a 38% decrease in battery. So how does that actually translate to games? I ran some tests on my Odin 2 before I got the Odin 2 Mini, so I have some data to compare to, and let's look at that now. These are complete 100% to 0% tests. Not 15 or 30-minute tests, since that's not accurate at all for Android. Wi-Fi is on, Bluetooth is off, screen is at 100% brightness, sound is at 10 or so percent since I have my sanity to think of to not hear music all day long, and fan is on sport mode. Because I was only able to do one test on the Odin 2 Mini so far, we're only going to look at one of the data points that I have at the moment, and I'll share the rest in the review. So, high performance mode on, and just sitting in Pokemon Shield for a Nintendo Switch, I saw a battery life of 232 minutes, which is just a tad under 4 hours on the Odin 2. Doing that exact same test on the Odin 2 Mini, and I got 168 minutes, or just close to 3 hours. So, as you can see, after just one single test, the difference is closer to 25% than it is to 38%. But I'm going to have other tests for GameCube, Performance Mode, and Nintendo 64, and all of that for my actual review, so we'll keep that for then. Since I was doing battery tests anyways, I figured I would check thermals while I'm at it. For this, I set both the Odin 2 and Mini to standard mode, and fan is on quiet. And then I ran Pokemon Shield once again, figuring this would give me the worst case scenario for heat. And I let it run for 30 minutes and then took the temperatures of both. For the Odin 2, the readings were 55 Celsius, CPU was 31%, memory was 35%, the back felt warm but not hot, and I used an external heat gun to measure temps, and the screen was 34 Celsius, front shell around the screen was 25 to 27 Celsius, back shell besides the intake was 25 to 27 Celsius, and the intake was 30 Celsius. For the Odin 2 Mini, the readings were 67 Celsius, CPU was 31%, memory was 43%, and the back felt warmer than the Odin 2, but not hot once again. It's definitely noticeably warmer though. I used an external heat gun to measure temps, and the screen was 44 Celsius, front shell around the screen was 29 Celsius, back shell beside the intake was 33 to 36 Celsius, and the intake was 33 Celsius. Takeaway being that, yeah, it does get warmer than the Odin 2, which is understandable given the smaller form factor, but I didn't find it noticeably uncomfortable. I'm going to leave that for the final review after I've used it a lot more. Just quickly on the fan, it does seem to have a decent amount of coil whine when it's on sport mode or smart mode and it ramps up. Here's a side by side with the Odin 2 so you can hear the difference. Likely a concern that a lot of people have that use the actual fan, but for those of us that usually keep it in quiet mode, it's inaudible like it is on the Odin 2. And that's going to be it for this impressions video. I wanted to just make it more information packed and as much as I can give you because I'm the first one to get this and I'm sure you have a lot of questions. So hoping that that helps you in a lot of different ways with a lot of different information. I didn't really provide a lot of my own thoughts throughout the video, so I think if I could condense my thoughts at the end here, if you were expecting an Odin 2 with an OLED and smaller, this is not that at all. This is a smaller Odin 2 with a panel that has the same amount of caveats as the Odin 2 has. You're giving up ghosting for vignetting. You're getting a much brighter screen than this is. I think overall, if you look at it, this screen, this one here is so much better than the IPS one, but I think a lot of people are going to focus on the vignetting, and that's going to be one of the biggest hiccups, I think, with this device, but the rest of it is fantastic. It feels nice in your hands, it's very comfortable, the screen is good to me. The thermals are the concern that I have, and I'm going to revisit that for the review because it does seem to get a little bit warm, but I guess that's all going to depend on what you're playing, what fan modes, and all of that. But I think overall, from my perspective, so far, this is what I was looking for. It's a smaller Odin 2, a very much smaller Odin 2, with a nice screen and the same amount of power. And to me, that is a good thing. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me on the Discord to get some early thoughts before my review if you want to ask me some questions. Support me on Patreon if you like my videos. And hope you all have a good one.